Shabbat Shalom, and welcome back to a new week, a new Shabbat in the Virtual House Church. It's my blessing. My name is Juan Carlos. It's my blessing to be once again with you all here in this new study of the Word of Yahuwah, in this new cycle that we started this year in the book of Joshua, the book of Yahushua in Hebrew, that has been such a blessing for me throughout these studies. You know, we were discussing here at home that early when we were reading the portion of today, that, in Hebrew is Tira Mehem, that it means do not fear them. That is becoming so relevant to the days that we are living today, is that all these messages that we are seeing in the book of Joshua is a kind of, parallel and a direct correlation of what's happening in the world today. Just give me a second because Jake is just joining us, so let me try to bring him in, and I need to configure everything here in OBS, so just give me a second. It's a blessing to be here in Virtual House Church. It's a blessing to be studying the book of Joshua.
Hello?
Yes, Jake, can you hear me? Just give me a second. You know what we are going to do while we are trying to bring Jake in? We are going to listen to a song, and this song is really, really nice. I know you like this song, and you will see Jake's face, while we are trying to bring Jake into the study today. So let me try to put this song here, and while I'm bringing Jake to the Virtual House.
From me, save me from
rise up now and make the wicked flee from me. Save me from the time of trouble that they riding on the cherubim. He will cleanse the land of sin. Lightnings flash from east to west. He has come for those he led. Riding on the cherubim, he will cleanse the land of sin. Lightnings flash from east to west. He has come for those he left. Righteous warriors of the word, light your candles, grab your swords, start the fight, stand in the night, destroy the darkness with his light. Lightnings flash from east to west. He has come for those he left. Riding on the cherubim, he will cleanse the land of all its
You know, this is such a way to start Virtual House Church, you know, with this nice song from Jake, and to start with all this power that, you know, we have Yahuwah from in our side. This is an amazing way to do it. The good thing is that, you know, we already have Jake here waiting in the back, so I will bring him just in a minute. Before that, you know, like we always do every week, is just to invite all of you to visit the Virtual House Church website. Let me put it in the screen. As you all know, that they are joining week by week, the Virtual House Church is a project that the beloved brother, Rob Skiva, with his wife, Chile, started back in 2012, 2013 timeframe. And, you know, this is something that he has been growing and growing year by year with the only purpose to spread the word and the truth of the word of Yahuwah. And this is an amazing and also an important work that we need to continue doing it. And, you know, the purpose that we are joining every week in the Virtual House Church has exactly that purpose. It's just to continue this amazing project that we are all part of the responsibility, a part of being called to be witnesses of the word of Yahuwah. And by doing Virtual House Church is an amazing way to do it. And not only by joining every week and studying the word of Yahuwah, going back to the basics, as you can see in the top of the screen, and that's the purpose of the Virtual House Church, is also inviting others to join us week by week in the study of the word of Yahuwah, and also to visit the website. You know, you can go by yourself to the different details and the different information you can find in the Virtual House Church website. And because there are plenty of information that Rob collected throughout all the years, you can find the broadcast in the different Torah cycles and the portions during all the years. Also important information that he collected as well in defending Messiah, coming out of Babylon, all the studies and all the revelation that he got from Yahuwah and he shared with all of us is there. So if you want to contribute, to do and give your terumah contribution, to the kingdom of Yahuwah, one way you can do it is just to take this website and to share it with more people. And this is an important starting point to study and build in the foundation that we need in the kingdom and the word of Yahuwah. So, you know, since we already put the song of Jake, this is an amazing song, let me bring my brother here to the screen. So, Jake, welcome back. Thank you for being with us again in the Virtual House Church. You know, I was talking before you joined, is that it's so amazing to see how every study of the book of Joshua, we see it that is so correlated and so related to what we are living in these days. You know, I was reading here at home with my wife this portion to prepare what we are going to share today. And I guess that also you're bringing the most probably similar points is that it's a parallel to what we are living in these days. And just to put a parenthesis, is the challenges that we're facing today are increasing day by day. I was taking a look in some news about what's happening in Austria yesterday, and most probably all of you know about the forbidden word that they are trying to get us something in. Is about all the restrictions they're doing for people that are not following the mandates. But I managed to see an additional news today is that those challenges are even increasing. And this thing is going to get mandatory for everyone in the country starting on 1st of February. So why I'm bringing this up is that it's not to be afraid. And we will touch base on these points again, once again today, most probably, is that we see these kind of challenges increasing. We see the persecution against those that are trying to follow a different way of life. And especially for those that are trying to follow the way of Yahuwah, that it shouldn't be a surprise to all of us that this will get even more challenging in the coming days and the coming months. But we need to be prepared. And this is the time to be prepared, to start getting prepared. Prepared especially, and not in the physical, also in the physical for sure, but most importantly, spiritually. And also in our mind, because we need to have this conviction about what Yahuwah has written in our heart, His Torah, His truth, the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, because through Him, we're going to have the necessary strength to go through everything that's coming to the world. So Jake, I don't know, most probably, as I said, you have many things to share with us today, but I wanted to start with that this correlation and this parallel that we see in the previous studies and also in what we're going to see today, to what we're facing in the world. So welcome back and Shabbat Shalom, brother. I cannot hear you, Jake.
Mic test. Hello.
Okay, I can hear you now. So Shabbat Shalom, brother.
Quiet?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, Shabbat Shalom, Juan. It's great to be here. Yeah, today's little study on Joshua 9 and 10 was pretty interesting. I wanted to share some interesting parallels I saw with the book of Revelation and some of the things we're seeing here. And I know at the beginning in chapter 9, we learn a little bit about the people of Gibeon that come in and they wilily that's the word that it uses in the King Jimmy, wilily deceive the children of Israel to not totally annihilate them, which is really interesting. But I know the first thing that came to me that I wanted to look up is what significance does Gibeon have later on in the scriptures, because it says that the other kings that heard of Gibeon giving over to the Israelites, they're like, hold on, we got to go up against them. And specifically it says that they feared greatly in chapter 10 verse 2 that Gibeon was a great city, and it was a royal city because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. So this was like one of those major places right alongside, Jerusalem and Jericho and all these major cities that actually surrendered, and kind of they were tricky in how they did it, but they were tricky in such a way as they saved their lives. Even though Joshua cursed them, they saved their lives because they recognized that the God of Israel, he was going to not deal too kindly with anybody who was going against his people. And so they basically kind of, went in and subtly deceived the Israelites. I thought the way they did that was interesting, and how they had the bread and they used the food that was spoiled to represent how long of a journey it took them to come up. But it turns out that they had just, basically chose spoiled bread and dried old food, and then acted like, hey, when we left, it was all fresh and new, and that's how far our journey was. But anyways, you guys have read through that if you've read through the chapter 9 already. But what I wanted to look up was Gibeon. What significance does the location of this city of Gibeon have in later scriptures? And so just kind of going through some of the things. I'm looking here in the Blue Letter Bible, and I'm just going to go through a variety of events and things that happened here in this place of Gibeon after the fact. And Joshua 21:17 talks about how out of the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon with her suburbs and Geba with her suburbs. So it was in this location of the inheritance of Benjamin. And we have here in in 2 Samuel, and it says 2 Samuel 20 verse 8, when they were at the great stone which is in Gibeon, Amasa went before them, and Joab's garment that he had put on was girded unto him, and upon it a girdle with a sword fastened upon his loins, and a sheath thereof as he went forth, and it fell out. And so this is, just some things that start to, tie to this location of Gibeon. 1 Kings 3:4 says, and the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was a great high place. 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer upon that altar. So we're kind of painting this picture of what this Gibeon city was like and why all these other kings feared so much, because it was a great high place, right? And there's some other interesting ones here. Let me find. So Gibeon. So it says in First Chronicles 16:39, and Zadok the priest and his brethren the priests before the tabernacle of the Lord in the high place that was at Gibeon. So this was a location where the tabernacle of Yah was kept. First Chronicles 21:29 says, for the tabernacle of the Lord, which Moses made in the wilderness, and the altar of the burnt offering were at the season in the high place at Gibeon. So this location of these people that came in, and they at least they submitted themselves, and they were these wicked men, the Canaanites that lived in the land, but they came in, and it makes me wonder if some of the choice of Gibeon as being the high place that eventually the tabernacle would be located at, as eventually some significant things would happen in this location of Gibeon. Could it be because that it wasn't a place of bloodshed, a place that had all the men, women, and children slaughtered? Could that be one of the reasons that location became significant? Because these people, they came in and they surrendered to Joshua and allowed them to basically become slaves. So I wanted to look up that the significance of the location of Gibeon, and because I think it's interesting. But as we kind of go through here, chapter 10 introduces the battle and the war that comes up of these kings, is kind of headed by a guy named Adon-Izedek, which means the Lord my righteousness, and he was the king of Jerusalem. And we know from the Torah portions in Genesis that it was Melchizedek that was the king of Jerusalem that came forth and brought an offering, and was given an offering by Abraham when he went and defeated the battle of the 5 kings there, whenever they stole his Lot, who traveled with Abraham, his relative. And so I just think there's an interesting parallel, one that I'm trying to bring out between that instance with Abraham and the battle of the five kings in Genesis. Genesis, I think it was chapter 14, maybe,
It
but
was in the
I'm gonna have
14, I
to
think. Yeah, because we were
14.
reading it this morning. I think it's 14, yeah.
And so that it's a significant parallel that between that battle and this recurring battle with another king of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But this time this king was not a confederate with Abraham, and he was an enemy who came against Jerusalem. So I thought that the title of Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, was interesting because Melchizedek, the Melchizedek priesthood, is one after which the Messiah is called in Hebrews. And so whenever we look at that word Adonizedek, the Lord is my righteousness, and Melchizedek, a king and priest, it's just interesting that this figure in Jerusalem, it turns out to be a bad guy, right? And so
Yeah.
we know it was not the king that brought forth to Abraham and blessed Abraham, but instead we know that this is either some evil descendant of his who was a Canaanite king, or that just because that king, the Melchizedek king, who went forth and blessed Abraham, basically that title was then being transferred down in some form or fashion over to whoever was over Jerusalem, which I think is kind of interesting. But not only that, but the whole idea that these kings came and they went and fought against Joshua and the children of Israel has some interesting parallels. And I'm going to read a portion of the book of Enoch that's tied with this. And we're going to look into some interesting things in book of Revelation that seem to be a parallel with this circumstance here with these kings. So I know I'm running through some things. Do you have any comments, Juan, before we get
No,
going
no,
into
no.
anything else?
Actually, yeah, I can comment, and maybe we can go and to try to complement with what I had over here. So, when I took a look in chapter 9, Jake, and let me put this in the screen. And then most probably it's gonna be very similar because I had to take some notes from the book of Revelation. We see here basically in chapter 1 and verse 2, this all this nation, all the sovereigns of this nation, hearing about what's going on, about what the Yahushua and the children of Israel were doing, and they decided to gather together to fight with Yahushua and Israel with one accord. So when I was saying this about what's happening today in the world, I see this parallel. It's like all the nations of the world uniting themselves in order to go against the children of Yahuwah. In this case, anybody that is going to not living according to the current system of the world, and they see it as, I don't know, as a threat, they are trying to fight back. And exactly what we see here, and there are the multiple parallels that in the book of Revelation about the end times prophecies, that we see the same happening. So, but to continue, Jake, we can go and try to complement each other to what we saw in this portion.
Yeah. So just how these five kings that came up to fight against Gibeon and against Israel is just how the Most High defeats them is very interesting. And of course, we're going to get into a little bit about Joshua chapter 10 verse 13, which is one of Rob's favorite verses, pointing out some interesting characteristics of how the sun stood still in the midst of the day. That there's some interesting biblical cosmology aspects to that, but just pointing out some parallels with the book of Revelation is in verse 11, chapter 10, verse 11, it says, "And it came to pass as they fled before Israel, when the going down to Bethron, that the Lord did cast down great stones from heaven upon them to Azekah, and they died. And there were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword." And we know in the book of Revelation, in the seventh trumpet in Revelation 11, at the end of the chapter, it says, or first, I'll read in verse 11, 18. "And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and they should give reward unto the servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name. Small and great should destroy them which destroy the earth. And the temple of God was opened on heaven, and there was seen in this temple the ark of his testament. And there was lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail." And we also see in Revelation chapter 16, verse 21, "And there fell upon men great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great." So, we can kind of see, with this example of these kings being totally just annihilated by the hail coming out of heaven, a picture of what will be in the book of Revelation in the end times, before the return of the Messiah. But just to kind of make some more interesting parallels with us, and then maybe we can discuss some more. But it says in Joshua 10, verse 16, that these 5 kings, they fled and they hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And why does that, ring some bells with what the kings of the earth in the book of Revelation will also be doing at the coming of the Son of Man? And we can see here in Revelation 6, verses 15 through 17. And it says, "Then the kings of the earth and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful and every one slave free hid themselves in the caves among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come. Who can stand?" And, the reason, it's significant to point out these interesting parallels as we go through the book of Joshua is we know Joshua, Yahushua, is the name of our Messiah. And so there's some really great, interesting parallels as we study through the scriptures that discuss this man, whom of which the Messiah was named after. And so this is just another example in chapter 10 of what we see, this coming judgment in the book of Revelation. And we know that he comes triumphantly, back, he lands on Mount Zion to come in and go into Jerusalem from the east gate. And I find it interesting that, this battle takes place, and one of these kings that is hiding himself in the caves of the earth, right? The king of Jerusalem. We know that there's going to be another person who sets himself up as a king in Jerusalem who, is going to be thwarted and destroyed by the Messiah. And so, the Antichrist figure is who I'm referring to. But it's another interesting parallel I'm trying to make here for you guys, that the reason I wanted to focus in on that name, Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, and how he set himself up as this Lord of righteousness, right? Well, we know that the Antichrist, in the book of Revelation, he's somebody who is in place of Christ and sets himself up in the temple of the Most High, according to Daniel also, that he's this replacement for the Messiah. Some people have postulated that the Antichrist figure, how is he going to deceive even the Christian nations? Well, he's going to present himself as a Christ figure, as a Jesus figure, to be able to deceive the nations. And that's a significant thing. And why it is worth pointing out that Adonai-Zedek, this king of Jerusalem who was evil in Joshua, is then defeated by the righteous leader of the Israelites, Yahushua, right? And Joshua comes in and defeats this imposter king of Jerusalem who is called a Lord of righteousness, as the Antichrist might be calling himself, because it's people who think they're doing service to God in the end times that are putting people to the sword, and people are losing their heads because there's going to be a one world system of worship, and it's all going to be funneled towards likely another coming king of Jerusalem, this Antichrist figure who sets himself up in the holy place to be called God. So I wanted to point out some of those really interesting, parallels there. And I can talk briefly, actually, before I talk about verse 13, and we can just kind of look at one of Rob's favorite verses. I want to read a portion in chapter 51 of the book of Enoch. And this is a portion that sorry, it's not chapter 51, it's chapter 62. I apologize. It's chapter 62 in the Lawrence edition. I know sometimes the chapters are slightly veered off, but I think it might be either a chapter before or chapter after in the R.H. Charles edition, but this is the one that starts off, and it says, in those days, talking about the judgment before the Son of Man, it says, in those days shall the mighty and the kings who possess the earth implore him to grant them a little respite from his angels of punishment, to whom they were delivered, that they might fall down and worship before the Lord of spirits, and confess their sins before him, and they shall bless and glorify the Lord of spirits. And they will say, and I wanted to read this because we see this scene of these wicked kings who come against Joshua, and we see another scene in the book of Revelation of wicked kings, the 10 kings that 3 of them give their power over to the beast, and these wicked kings in the book of Revelation at the end of time before the coming of the Son of Man. These are all kings coming against Israel and the God of heaven and earth, right? And so Yahuwah, this is the scene of judgment as the Son of Man deals out kind of judgment, and this is the statements that Book of Enoch says that these particular people we're reading about, who come against Israel, who fight against the Lord of hosts, right? This is what they say on Judgment Day, and it's a very sobering, interesting scene. And it continues on to say that this is what they say: blessed is the Lord of spirits, and the Lord of kings, and the Lord of the mighty, and the Lord of the rich, and the Lord of glory, and the Lord of wisdom. And splendid in every secret thing is thy power from generation to generation, and thy glory forever and ever. Deep are all thy secrets and innumerable, and thy righteousness is beyond reckoning. We have now learned that we should glorify and bless the Lord of kings, and him who is king over all kings. And they shall say, would that we had rest to glorify and give thanks and confess our faith before his glory. And now we long for a little rest, but find it not. We follow hard upon and obtain it not. And light has vanished from before us, and darkness is our dwelling place forever and ever. For we have not believed before him, nor glorified the name of the Lord of spirits. But our hope was in the scepter of our kingdom and in our glory. And in the day of our suffering and tribulation, he saves us not, and we find no respite for confession. But our Lord is true in all his works, and in his judgments and his justice, and his judgments have no respect of persons. And we pass away from before his face on account of our works, and all our sins are reckoned up in righteousness. And now they shall say unto themselves, our souls are full of unrighteous gain, but it does not prevent us from descending from the midst thereof into the burden of Sheol. And after their faces shall be filled with darkness and shame before that Son of Man, and they shall be driven from his presence, and the sword shall abide before his face in their midst. Thus spake the Lord of spirits. This is the ordinance and judgment with respect to the mighty and the kings and the exalted and those who possess the earth before the Lord of spirits. So that was, once again, chapter 62 in the Lawrence edition of the first book of Enoch. And it's very interesting. And the reason I wanted to read that is it's this extreme sobering scene where these kings who ruled over the earth, these are the elite among us. These are the,
Mhm.
the people that control the people that control us, right? These are, these are the kings of the earth. And similarly, these are these kings likely who came up against even Joshua and the sons of Israel. And, what do they recognize is that, once they have died, they are pretty much saying, if only we had an opportunity, if only we had a chance to go back and repent, to go back and make our lives a dedicated thing to Yahuwah, and to serve him and keep his ways, and to serve, be his people, or be, his servants on the earth. But they lost the opportunity because they trusted in their rule. They trusted in their kingdom and their pleasure. And the reason I like to read that, and this is the scene that these kings would be put through, after they were put to the sword, is because, if this is the very statement that the kings of the earth are making, that the kings in the book of Revelation that are judged are making, the kings that hide themselves in the caves, right? And then they, are put to the sword by the Son of Man when he comes back, as that conquering lion. If this is what the kings are saying, how much more so should we, just everyday people, learn from this example and say, man, we should live our lives in a continually repentant state, and to seek and use this life as a gift, and use it to serve the Most High. Because if the kings, the top level of us, are saying all the things that we've gained, and all the scepter and all the rule, it's nothing compared to, serving and standing before the Son of Man without having to be ashamed. And so, I wanted to read that just because, we see all these parallels with the judgment and Revelation with the Son of Man when he comes back, and those kings and these kings who, were judged by Joshua. I also thought it was very interesting. I'm starting to realize as we go through these portions of Joshua, how often Joshua seems to, prop people up that did them wrong on trees, and and there's
True.
almost like a recurrence of this theme of these kings that come against Israel being basically crucified. They were put to the sword, of course, but hung up on trees. Now, of course, we see that they take them down so as to not curse the land. But
Yeah.
interesting that
Actually,
this guy.
Jake,
Go
let
ahead.
me interrupt you a bit, because we had a discussion here when we were reading the portion, and then when we read the chapter 10, it makes a comparison with the way to treat the kings of the other cities needed to be exactly as they did it with the king of Jericho. But there was no indication when we were reading the chapter 6, I think, about the battle in Jericho, how they did it with the king of Jericho. But there is another passage, I don't remember by heart now, that there was a comparison as well with the king of Ai. And we were talking about this last week. And the first one that they used the tree and hang him in the tree was the king of Ai. So we were wondering, and I would like to hear what's your thought on this, is that maybe the way they treated all the kings, not only the 5 they found in this cave, because when we read the entire chapter 10, they are mentioning other cities that were not part of the first 5 kings that they decided to go and fight against Yahushua and the children of Israel. That maybe they did exactly the same. The scripture is silent in this. But I'm wondering, what do you think? Maybe the way that they do it with the kings was hanging them in the tree after using the sword. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting that this Joshua, who our Messiah Yahushua was hung on a tree, right?
Yeah.
That you see this example of him in his conquering of the Holy Land and the conquering of all these pagan kings, that they're the ones being put up on the tree this time. And I think is a possibility that, this was done to all of the rulers. And it makes me really want to look into the significance and the meaning behind,
Yeah.
them putting them up on the tree, which I think there's definitely something there.
I fully agree with you. And actually, it's really, really interesting to see this parallel when we think in Yahushua that he was hanging the tree as well. Considering that Yahushua is a king as well. So the king of Israel was hanging the tree because of other purposes. And we see here the king's also being hanging the tree as a foreshadow of what was going to happen to Yahushua HaMashiach, the king.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, definitely something there for sure.
Yeah. Sure. Let's continue, brother.
All right. So let's see here. What else? Just the interesting verse that, chapter 10, verse 13 says this amazing miracle that happened by Joshua. And it says, the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down the whole day. Just a really interesting just scene here. That you see in verse 12, the sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon, when Joshua commanded it. And one of the reasons Rob loved this was, of course, how do we answer the question of how can the sun be commanded to stand still, if the way that the sun moving across the sky on the heliocentric model is that the earth is actually spinning? Did, in this instance, Joshua command the earth to stand still so that the sun would appear still? Or was he commanding the sun itself to stand still in a more, locale, way, as to, kind of lend credence to a, more of a biblical cosmology of the sun and the moon being much smaller, closer within the firmament? And those are all very interesting things that this particular verse brings out. Whenever a servant of the Most High commands something, if we play this out, if it had happened, then the rotation of the earth, which is going thousands of miles an hour, if the earth had stopped, just the wind shear alone and the destructive power of, everything coming to a still, would have definitely been a different sight to behold. But it just makes you really wonder, how things like this happened. And I know there's some interesting beliefs that this instance of him commanding the sun and the moon to stand still could be why the calendar is not as completely perfect as perhaps it was during creation. I know there's some beliefs that that there was originally a perfect 360-day year, Juan, you're much more studied in the Book of Enoch calendar in regards to this topic, but maybe you could share a little bit about this and how could this period of the sun and moon standing still have altered the way that the calendar operates, and the sun, moon, and stars are set up for signs, seasons, and moedim in the first chapter of Genesis. Is what it says. And so we know that God, Yahuwah, uses the sun, the moon, and the stars to dictate his appointed times. So it makes me wonder, how does this instance affect the clock in the sky, so to speak? And I know I've heard other beliefs that perhaps the great earthquake that happens in the book of Revelation will readjust things to go back into a perfect sync as to how the the biblical Leviticus 23 calendar would play out. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's always an interesting couple verses. If he affected the clock in the sky and he slowed it down, what impact that had going forward in terms of the day and in the months and the years.
Yeah, no, for sure. And while you were speaking, and I saw few comments in the chat as well. There was one of the favorite passage of Rob. How come that he's not calling the earth to stop, and he's calling the sun and the moon, and the major and the huge catastrophe that could happen if the earth is rotating, and he's commanding everything to stop. We are not rotating like this. There's a different cosmology on the scripture. So, to your question, this is something, as you said, the many believes that this is somehow one of the events that somehow imply a change in the calendar, in the perfect system of on the clock of Yahuwah, because of what happened with the sun and the moon. To be honest, in my view, I don't see it like that, and I will explain to myself in just a minute. Because when we see when we understand what is a day, according to the scripture, and that the day is being measured, is the light portion, is when the sun is going up until it's going down. In this case, what was happening is basically the day got extended, got longer. In terms of the experience we live, if we want to call it, is in terms of hours. It was a longer day in terms of hours. And we know that hour is not the way that the scripture is measuring time. So basically, it's not that there was a different time or different days. It just was a longer day. The only way that I see that maybe could impact this, Jake, and this is a matter of study, and I don't have the answer, is that it's interesting that Joshua, in this case, is talking to the sun and to the moon to stop. But there's no reference at all about the stars. And we know that the stars also are revolving on the sky. So the only thing that it caught my attention, has been getting my attention since a long time, is that maybe there is a kind of difference or an impact in the calendar just because he didn't call the stars to get stopped. And maybe it was a kind of a desynchronization between the stars, the sun, and the moon. Now, the sun, the moon, and the stars, based on what we read in the book of Genesis, they're supposed to work and to rule the night and to work together. So the other explanation and the other position could be that at the moment that he called the moon to stop, maybe also the stars got stopped, so without losing the synchronization. But this is one of the biggest topics on the calendar. Just to understand why there is this kind of deviation, or what about what has been happening throughout the years about the perfect timing of the 360 days, and now everybody is saying that it's 365 because this is what we see according to science. I think, and I have been sharing in the past this in this channel, is that I believe that we will get this answer directly from the mouth of Mashiach. The time is getting so soon that most probably he is going to be the one that is going to reveal to us what's the real timing and what happened. But he's going to restore everything to as it was at the very beginning. As you said, maybe it's going to be that the big earthquake that is being prophesied in the book of Isaiah, Yeshayahu. Actually, the book of Revelation talks about multiple earthquakes, but the biggest one at the end, it will change everything. So maybe it's gonna be that earthquake, or maybe it's gonna be the new creation and the new restoration of all things. And the more exciting thing, from my point of view, Jake, is that if we continue until the end, and we endure until the end, we are not gonna be a spectator of the restoration. We are gonna be an active workers And we are going to be actively working with Yahushua in order to restore everything as it was intended at the very beginning. So at least that for me, that's the most exciting news, and that this is what I'm expecting to help with.
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah,
those very
okay.
interesting verses. Absolutely, just stands out as one of those great miracles, that happened throughout the scriptures. And if Joshua, had that kind of authority and power, and the Most High was behind him, then it really makes you wonder, coming forward, as the children of the light, the elect stand forth and start to operate in the amazing miracles that are going to be happening parallel to all the terrible judgments that we see in the book of Revelation. What amazing things could be happening in the future, that we'll get to witness if we're counted worthy. So
Exactly.
anyways, just man, very interesting.
And
Um,
actually, I'm highlighting here the verse 14, and that this is totally aligned to what we're discussing now. It says, and there has been no day like that before it or after it, that Yahuwah listened to the voice of a man, because Yahuwah fought for Israel. So can you imagine, the commandment of a person, in this case, Joshua ben Nun, son of Nun, the sun and the moon got totally on hold. They were not moving. And I was remembering exactly the miracles of Yahushua when he was commanding the winds and the waves and the storm to be calm. So the power that they were showing, the power of Yahuwah that was flowing through them, was so amazing that they even had the control over nature. When I think in this kind of things, what's coming after the establishment of the kingdom of Yahuwah, and I think Paul is talking about this as well when he's talking about the power that are coming in the new age, and he's referring to the kingdom. It's going to be amazing, and that's why I was saying that I'm excited to get to these points, because just think on the way that the power of Yahuwah flowing through us in order to, beside the hand of Yahushua HaMashiach, to be able to restore everything as it was at the beginning. And now it's coming to my mind what is written. I don't remember in which part of the scripture, but is that the creation itself is crying out for the manifestation of the children of Elohim. Why is crying out? All the system of the world now is talking about the climate change. It's talking about that we need to save the environment. They're talking about the Mother Earth. They're not knowing that they're committing idolatry by doing that. Is that we need to do all the efforts in order to save the creation, and they're going to the point, as I said before, to worship the creation instead of recognizing and worshiping the Creator, Yahuwah Elohim. But the intention behind is good, because it's part of our role that we need to manage and administer the earth. That was part of the role of Adam at the beginning as well. But just thinking that the event is going to be Yahuwah through us, by his power, that's why the earth is crying out for the manifestation of the children of Elohim, because we, together with Yahushua HaMashiach, he being the king, the righteous king, we are going to restore creation. And that's amazing. And we will see things like we are reading here on the book of Joshua being done by Yahushua, but most probably being done by you and me as well. And this is terribly exciting. I want to be in that moment. I want to be part of it.
Yeah, it'll be pretty amazing to see.
Yep.
Well, Juan, that was the main little points I had to share about our Torah portion here. Just very, very interesting parallel. I I didn't get to flesh it out more, but I definitely think there's some parallels with what we saw with the battle of the 5 kings in the story with Abraham, and also these 5 kings that we see here with Joshua. Because this is what we're seeing here is the manifestation of the promise that was given to Abraham as Israel goes in and takes over the land. The whole there was the 400 years from the day that Abraham was given the promise to the day that they entered into the land. So there's definitely things being fulfilled here that I think we see there with Abraham. And Abraham was called a prophet by the Most High, and so it makes you wonder, what areas was Abraham prophetic in? And so when I see little parallels like this and these five kings and how you had even in the way that Gibeon and the people of Gibeon came, and they were like kind of like they were these Canaanites, the people living amongst the people that came and asked for for Joshua to come and help them. It really did remind me of the kings that came to Abraham and asked him to come and help them and to set Lot free. So there's so many things that we can kind of look at here as the scriptures are being fleshed out, and those promises of Abraham, promises that were given to Abraham, are coming true. So definitely more there to look into if you guys have some time, but that's all I have to share today. One.
No, it's good, brother, and I will complement with the points that I have over here. Because as I said at the beginning, the correlation with the end times is amazing, and actually when you were sharing about this passage in the book of Hanoch, the book of Enoch, I was remembering that Yahuwah himself, I think it's written in the book of Matthew, he was talking about how the people of Nineveh, and how the sovereign of Saba they are gonna to raise up in the judgment day, and they are gonna even to show themselves even more righteous of the cities of that he was speaking about. So I think that's gonna happen. Most probably these kings that as you were pointed out, they are gonna say something at judgment day. And we are going to be, and that's also exciting to think about. We are going to be witnesses of all of that. We are going to be able to see and hear all of that during Judgment Day if we are faithful until the end. So, just to go and complementing what you said, Jake, if we go to the book of Revelation, just to read by ourselves in the chapter 16. And this is the parallel I see with the first two verses of chapter 9, that is all the nation joining together in order to go and fight with Yahushua and the children of Israel. We see it clearly here in two instances in the prophetic view of the end times. The first time is in the chapter 16, verse 13 to 16, and it says the following. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits as frogs. For they are spirits of demons, doing signs which go out to the sovereigns of the entire world to gather them to the battle of that great day of Yahuwah the Almighty. And just to put a stop there, let's keep in mind that these nations that they were fighting with were the descendant of the Nephilim. And we know that the spirit of demons that we're seeing here in the book of Revelation, we know that demons, who are demons when we read the book of Enoch, the Revelation of Enoch, demons are the spirit of the Nephilim. So we see in the story of Joshua, the spirit of the Nephilim decided to join together in order to go and fight with Yahushua ben Nun and the children of Israel. And here, in Revelation, we see the spirit of the Nephilim going out to all the nations of the world in order to prepare themselves for the great battle of the great day of Yahuwah the Almighty. To fight with whom? We'll see it in a minute. But we know to fight with Yahushua HaMashiach and the Kodeshim. So the parallel is important, and it's great that everything that happened in the past and everything that's happening today is through the work of the spirit of the Nephilim. And I think I mentioned this in the past, just to spend a little bit in this thought. Isn't that amazing to see that everything that's happening in one country today is happening in the different other countries in different locations of the world? Isn't that amazing that the mindset of the people, no matter their language, no matter their culture background, no matter their political views and so on, is exactly the same in one country and other countries? And it's exactly the same. This is just to blow our mind. How come, no matter the communications, the technologies, and so on, that we are able, even in this virtual house church, to get each other, that it could be a kind of influence in the people? It's true. We should recognize that, but we need to look with the eyes of the Spirit and to see that if there's so much alignment in terms of the mindsets and the attitudes, because there is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual warfare. And if we see this alignment and the same attitude, no matter that the different cultures, different locations, different time zones, different cultures, it's because of the spirit of the Nephilims. In the same way that we see it in the story of Joshua ben Nun, with all these kings going together, in the same way that we see here coming in the book of Revelation, that are doing this work. And that's why it's so important that we need to be prepared with the full battle gear for this spiritual warfare. That's the only way that we are going to be able to understand what's going on. And this is the only way that we are going to be able to be disconnected to what's going on. And if we want to look at it from the other point of view, from the other side of the street, to us it's happening exactly the same. And why I'm trying to say is that in this case we see the darkness doing their work with the spirit of the Nephilim in order to put the same mindset in all humanity, in all the nations of the world. But we ask, the spirit, the Ruach of Yahuwah, the Ruach HaKodesh, is doing with you and me in order to put us in the same mindset, in the mind of Yahushua HaMashiach, in order to have the same attitude, in order to walk in righteousness. And we see these two things, the children of lights and the children of darkness. So all of this is so important. That's why I see is correlated, this what we see in this chapter, to what's happening today in the world and what is coming. So let's continue reading what it says here in the verse 15. See, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who is staying awake and guarding his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And they gather them together to the place called in Hebrew Har Megiddo. So what the whole scenario here in the prophetic view is that this battle of Armageddon, in this case in Hebrew is Har Megiddo, because it's a place, it's a big valley. If you have not, if you don't know, and actually it's a small mountain over there, that it was a high place in the past. But this is one of the biggest valley in the land of Israel. That even when I had the blessing to visit for the first time that place, I remember somebody told me is that even Napoleon said when he was in that places in his age, that he said that was the best place on earth to have a big battle, because the valley is so big that when you see this big land and the big valley, you can imagine what's going to happen. All the nations of the world are sitting here, joining together in order to fight with the one that is coming from heaven. So here we see, just to continue with the parallel, the same thing as we see in the book of Joshua, chapter 9, and also chapter 10. And there is an additional one that if we go to the chapter 20th, because that's not the end. The end is coming after the millennial kingdom of Yahushua HaMashiach. If we go to the chapter 20th, chapter 7 and 8, it says, and when the 1,000 years have ended, Satan shall be released from his prison And he shall go out to lead the nations astray, which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. So this is the attitude of the nations of the world. These are the work of the spirit of the Nephilim, that even in this case, through the leadership of Satan once again, nations will go to fight against Yahushua and against the people of Yahuwah. But the most important thing that no matter this battle, no matter these intentions, as we see in the chapter 10 that Yahuwah fought for them, Yahuwah will continue fighting for his people. And that's why, I like so much what is written in the book of Psalms, in the book of Tehillim in Hebrew, chapter 2. And I was seeing some comments that the chapter 110 also is saying something similar. We will read both of them. It says the following in Psalms chapter 2. Why do the nations rage and the peoples meditate emptiness? The sovereigns of the earth take their stand, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahuwah and against his Mashiach, his Messiah, and say, let us tear apart their bonds and throw away their ropes from us. He who is sitting in the heavens laughs. Yahuwah mocks at them. Then he speaks to them in his wrath and troubles them in his rage, saying, but I have set my sovereign on Zion, my set-apart mountain. I inscribe for a law. Yahuwah has said to me, you are my son. Today I have brought you forth. Ask for me, and I make the nations your inheritance, and the ends of the earth your possession. Break them with a rod of iron, dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. And now be wise of sovereigns, be instructed, you rulers of the earth. Serve Yahuwah with fear and rejoice with trembling. He is the chosen, lest he be enraged, and you perish in the way, for soon his wrath is to be kindled. Blessed are all those taking refuge in him. So we know that Yahuwah is always in control. We saw it in this chapter 10 that he was the one fighting the fight for Yahushua and the children of Israel. No matter that the nations of the world being manipulated by the spirit of the Nephilim, the demons, wants to fight against Yahuwah and his anointed, we know this what the Yahuwah thinks on this. We know that he's in control, and we know that Yahuwah will send Yahushua once again, and he will destroy his enemies, as we see in the scripture, and especially in the book of Revelation. And then let's read the chapter 110. I don't remember by heart, but let's see what it says. Yahuwah said to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Yahuwah sends your mighty scepter out of Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people volunteer in the day of your might, in the splendors of the set-apartness. From the womb, from the morning, you have the dew of your youth. Yahuwah has sworn and does not relent. You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Speaking of Yahushua, Yahuwah at your right hand shall smite sovereigns in the day of his wrath. He judges among the nations. He shall fill the nations with dead bodies. He shall crush the head over the mighty earth. He drinks of the stream by the wayside. Therefore he does lift up the head. This is amazing, because it's totally correlated to the end times. And we see an example here in this book of Joshua. Jake, I always remembered, and also was part of the discussion here at home earlier today, is that everything that was written, and Paul talked about it, everything that is written in the scripture, is because it serves for our example, in order not to fail on the same things, in order to have the same attitude, the positive attitude when we see servants like Abraham, Joshua, Caleb, Moshe, and many others. And this is for us to be encouraged, especially for these times. And as Solomon said, in one of the books, is that history is repetitive. Everything that happened in the past, it will happen again. Maybe with certain differences because of the the technology advance, or because of cultural changes, maybe. I don't know. But in the root of the many of all things, it's going to happen exactly the same. Until we see it, just by reading these passages in the book of Revelation about prophecy, we see that it's exactly the same that happened in the past. Fights, persecution, battles, but we know at the end who wins. We know at the end who is in control. Is Yahuwah Elohim. So everything that we are reading, especially in this book of Joshua, is just for us to get the encouragement in order to be prepared for what's coming. To know that Yahuwah is with us and we have nothing to fear. So, and there's no doubt, the world is preparing itself today. The nations of the world are preparing themselves for what we were reading in the book of Revelation, in order to join together in the same way that they were joining together in chapter 9 and chapter 10 of the book of Joshua. I don't know, Jake, if you want to make any comments before I continue.
No, nothing in particular. Just it is very interesting to see how all the scriptures are an example for us, and that's why we read. That's why we study these things. Too much, we inherited from the church to just focus on the end of the book, and sometimes we also forget to not read the end of the book as much as we start to study the beginning of the book. But all of it, is for us, for an example. But Second Timothy, talks about how the scriptures are for training and reproof and training in righteousness. And that's why we read these things. To one big lesson we could learn from this is they would never have had this this issue with the deception of Gibeon if they'd sought after the wisdom of the Most High first. And this is the lesson they should have learned in our last chapter we read last week regarding going up to fight the battle against AI. So anyways, yeah, it's very, very interesting, and it's very important for us to learn these lessons.
Something comical happened, and actually this was my wife telling me this earlier, because you remember last week we were talking about the skin of AI and the people of AI, and exactly where we were discussing, I said AI, it's amazing because it's artificial intelligence. It's exactly what's happening today. So she told me today about these people of Givon, that they disguise themselves to be from a distant land, from far away. So they were kind of aliens, coming from a faraway land. So could it be that maybe we are talking about the AI, artificial intelligence, until later on we will have a great illusion of a people coming from the outside of the earth, saying that we are coming from a distant land in order to deceive everybody? I don't know. I talked to Rob in the past about it. We were in the same mind, believing that there is coming a disclosure on the way, that maybe it's comical, but maybe it could be. Who knows? Need to be prepared for anything.
Well, you're just striking the thought of the whole. It even ties to the alien agenda, which is the whole alien overlords. We've had a lot of disclosure happening in the military, releasing UFO sightings and such as that. But the whole deception there is that those aliens are claiming that they've come from a long journey, from a very far off place, like interstellar, right? But the truth of it is that they are terrestrial spirits and beings that are from here to deceive, and very interesting.
Yeah, and actually, it's not only that, Jake. And let's read what is said in the chapter 9, verse 6 and 13, because it could be the alien agenda, it could be anything, even people that we know, that is coming with this message. And what I want to highlight is in the verse 6 to 13. And it says, and they went, the people of Givon, they went to Yahushua, to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, we have come from a far land, and now make a covenant with us. But the men of Israel said to the Hivites, and it's important, this is the only place that we see that these people of Givon was the descendant from the Hivites. It could be that you dwell in our midst, so how could we make a covenant with you? So they were doubting And we were debating here, so how come that, they were all these 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness, they for sure, Yahuwah was providing to them, but they knew what it means to walk for a long time. So why they were so easy to deceive? And I do believe as you, Jake, that and I don't have the answer, but I do believe that there is a more profound meaning in this whole story. I find many meanings. That this is what we are sharing today, but I do believe there is still a missing piece of what this whole story means. And because it's difficult to understand, logically thinking, why they was so easy to be deceived. Even when they ask here in the verse 7, they were doubting. So why I'm going to believe you? Maybe you are trying to deceive me. This is what they're trying to say. But even though they believed them and they were deceived. So, let's continue reading, because this is the part that for me is interesting, and I think is the main message I got. And it says, and they said to Yahushua, the people of Givon, we are your servants. So first point, they are presenting themselves as servants of Yahushua. And this is important. They are saying, I'm your servant, Yahushua ben Nun in this case. Think here in Mashiach. Yahushua HaMashiach, I'm your servant. And let's continue. And Yahushua said to them, who are you, and where do you come from? So they said to him, from a land very far off, your servants have come, because of the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim. For we have heard the report of him, and all that he did in Mizraim, in Egypt, and all that he had done to the two sovereigns of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon, sovereigns of Heshbon, and Og, sovereign of Bashan, who was at Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our land spoke to us, saying, take food with you for the journey, and go to meet them, and say to them, we are your servants, and now make a covenant with us. This bread of ours we took hot for our provision from our houses on the day that we left to come to you. But now, see, it is dry and it is crumbly. And these wineskins which we filled were new, and see, they are torn. And these our garments and our sandals have become old because of the very long journey. So what's my point here? We see all the falsehood, everything that they prepared in order to deceive the people of Israel. And I managed to see a comment from Karen earlier in the chat that Yahushua also mentioned a parable talking about the wineskins and so on. So I'm wondering, like Karen mentioned in the chat, what's the parallel with that parable? Most probably there's something. I don't have the answer, but it's something that we should study. But the point that I wanted to highlight is that these people that are coming to deceive the children of Israel are presenting themselves as servants of Yahushua. But also they are talking about Yahuwah. They are talking about that they fear Yahuwah, and that they believe in Yahuwah and so on. And from my point of view, there are two ways to look at it. One thing is thinking on what they are doing in order that they wanted to deceive the people. And in the other way is something that by this action they were saved anyway, but they received a punishment. If I talk about the first point, I remembered what Yahushua said, and let's go to the book of Matthew in Hebrew chapter 24. And again, talking about the end times and talking about what's happening today in the world. The chapter 24, verse 23 to 26 says, if anyone that says to you, look, it is the Messiah, or there, do not believe. For false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. See, I have forewarned you. So if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, do not go out, or look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe. So Yahushua has forewarned us that this will happen. And I do believe this is happening in these times, and it will increase even more. So the big mistake, and you mentioned this already, Jake, that they did is that they act by their own thoughts, by their own wisdom, and they didn't consult with Yahuwah. And that's why they were falling into this deceit. So I think that's the main thing that we need to think in these days, that everything we do, any decision we want to make, we need to let the Ruach guide us. We need to consult with Yahuwah always, as David were doing all the time. You know, I have always wondering how David were doing it. You know, every time that he wanted to go to a fight, he was asking Yahuwah, and Yahuwah was telling him, go to the right, go to the left, go to this place, wait for a minute, or wait a bit. Even with Joshua ben Nun, he was doing exactly the same. We were reading about it last week or the previous week. So this is the way that we need to seek Yahuwah's face in order to consult with him everything we need to do in our lives. And you know, what's coming to the world is going to be even more important to be led by the Ruach HaKodesh. You know, I didn't plan to share this, and I don't have all the information, but tomorrow I will go to visit my parents. And it seems that he wants to share something very important with me. He just sent me a text the other day saying he was visited by a messenger, by an angel, and he always having some spiritual experiences since I know him. And what the message he got is that this angel was telling him that difficult times are coming to the earth. And you know, we can think this is easy to see it. You know, everything that's happening today in the world, we see that we are getting to a point that it's going to be very difficult. But he said that he will share with me more tomorrow, so I'm very interested to know what he received. But what's the point, and why I'm connecting all of this? Is that a great delusion is coming. You know, a great delusion is coming. Most probably we are living already in the great delusion. But this is going to become even greater, even more difficult. That's why Yahushua was saying that if possible, even to deceive and lead astray the chosen one. So how difficult is going to be, and how great this delusion is going to be, that even the chosen ones can be deceived. Can you imagine that? So I think in this portion is a tremendous example to all of us, is that in order not to be deceived, we need to consult with Yahuwah. And this is the time that we need to learn how to do it. I don't have the recipe for that. This is something that is the relationship we need to build in a personal level with Yahuwah Elohim. You know, the way that he is talking to me and leading me is not necessarily the same way that he's going to lead you and talk to you. That's why we need to seek his face in order to understand and learn how he is leading us. Because what's coming, we are going to need more than ever to be led by the Ruach HaKodesh. And, you know, just to finish this point, he also, Yahushua HaMashiach, mentioned about this in the chapter 7, and we have been reading this many times, but let's do it again. In the verse 22 and 23, it says, "Many shall say to me in that day, Master, Master, have not prophesied in your name and cast out demons in your name, and that many mighty works in your name? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness." So, you know, we need to be attentive what's happening in the world. We need to be attentive, especially to the voice of the Ruach HaKodesh. We need to seek Yahuwah's face, and we need to consult with him all the time for any decision and any action we want to take. We need to consult with him in order not to be deceived. Because that was the biggest issue that they committed. And this is clearly seen in the chapter 9, verse 14 and 15 of the book of Joshua. It said, "And the men of Israel took some of their food, but they did not ask them out of Yahuwah. And Yahushua made peace with them and made a covenant with them to let them live, and the rulers of the congregation swore to them." So that's why we need to consult always with Yahuwah. And the other point that caught my attention, and I think I mentioned and I shared this in the past, Jake, is about the importance of vows and oath. What we say with our mouth, it has such a huge relevance to the eyes of Yahuwah that we need to understand, we need to learn, and we need to restrain our tongue sometimes. That's why in the book of Mishle, Proverbs, it says that, is wiser is the one that is listening more than talking less. It's not the way that it's said, but this is basically what is teaching. I always have hearings that's why Yahuwah give us 2 ears and just 1 mouth in order to listen more than to talk less. But why is that, and why I'm mentioning it? It's because the importance of what we say is so relevant that we see it here in this portion. And it's going to the point, even to the important point, that Yahuwah gave them an instruction to the people of Israel to destroy the 7 nations of the land of Canaan. And one of the nations was the Hivites, and we saw that this people of Givon was the descendant of the Hivites. But they made this covenant of peace, and they made this oath, that even this oath became more relevant to the eyes and of Yahuwah, more than the instruction that Yahuwah gave them to destroy them. Why I'm saying this? Because it's written here. Let's continue reading, actually, into the verse 18 to 20. It says, but the children of Israel, after they realized the mistake they made, they realized that these people were not coming from that distant land. They were part of the 7 nations of the land of Canaan. They tried to fight with these people. So it says in the verse 18, but the children of Israel did not strike them, because the rulers of the congregation had sworn to them by Yahuwah Elohim of Israel. And all the congregation grumbled against the rulers. And this is also something that my wife pointed out. The people grumbling against the rulers. And then this is what we see it all the time today. But we need to understand the difference. When we see the ruler, there's something that Yahuwah has appointed, and that ruler is walking according to the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah. We saw it with Moses, and we saw it with Aaron. We need to follow the leaders that Yahuwah has appointed, if they are righteous and following the righteousness of Yahuwah. But what is happening here, just to come back to the point, is that they were not able to strike them because of the oath. So this oath took priority compared to the instruction of destroy this nation of the land. So that's the importance of what we say with our mouth. And let's continue reading in the 19. But all the rulers said to all the congregation, we have sworn to them by Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, and we are unable to touch them now. Let us do this to them. We shall keep them alive, lest wrath be upon us because of the oath which we swore to them. So in these just 3 verses, we see what's the importance of what we say, what we speak with our mouth. And where we find this in Torah is basically in the book of Numbers, the Midbar, Hebrew, chapter 30th, verse 1 and 2. And it says the following, and Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, this is the word which Yahuwah has commanded. When a man vows a vow to Yahuwah, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, and this is the part that we are seeing here, an application, a practical application in the case of the children of Israel, he does not break his word. He does according to all that comes out of his mouth. So that's the relevant. And if we continue in the timeline of the scripture, we see that this oath they swore to the people of Givon stand until the time of the King Saul and King David. So let's go to the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 21. It says the following. We're going to read from verse 1 to 6. And there was a scarcity of food in the days of David for 3 years, year after year. And David sought the face of Yahuwah. Here we see a different example. David, a righteous king, seeking the face of Yahuwah, consulting with Yahuwah. This is an example, that we need to learn. This is the way we need to do it. Seeking the face of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah answered. And he answered the following: because of Shaul, this Saul, and his bloodthirsty house, because he killed the Givonites. These are the same Givonites that we see in the book of Joshua, that they made an oath in order to them to become their servants. And that was the reason that we just read, that they were not able to strike them. In this case, Saul didn't follow that covenant, and he struck the Givonites. And that's why, the entire Israel were suffering of scarcity of food. So let's continue reading. The sovereign therefore called the Givonites and spoke to them. Now the Givonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites. This is so interesting. Again, considering that the Amorites, the Hivites, were part of the 7 nations that Israel needed to destroy. And the children of Israel had sworn protection to them, but Shaul had sought to strike them in his ardor for the children of Israel and Yehudah. So David said to the Givonites, "What should I do for you? And with what do I make atonement, so that you bless the inheritance of Yahuwah?" And the Givonites said to him, "It is no matter of silver or gold between us and Shaul or his house, neither is it for us to put to death any man in Israel." And he said, "Whatever you say, I do for you." David understood the importance of the oath, something that Saul didn't understood. David understood, and that's why he was asking them what I should do in order to do atonement. And this is important, again, just to think in our own walk, the importance of what we say and what is going out of our mouth. And they said to the sovereign, "The man who consumed us and plotted against us, that we should be destroyed from the remaining in all the borders of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be given to us, and we shall hang them before Yahuwah in Givah of Shaul, whom Yahuwah chose." And the sovereign said, "I give them." So, the relevance of the oath, we see it here, enduring time. Enduring time. What's going to happen at the end times? I don't know. That was part of the discussion with my wife as well. That, what's going to happen with the Hivites, because those are part of the enemies of Yahuwah. But the point is that part of our walk, we need to be careful with what we say, with what we confess. And looking at it in the other angle as well. We have confessed with our mouth that Yahushua HaMashiach is King and is Adon. We have confessed with our mouth that the covenant of Yahuwah is our covenant, and through Yahushua we are part of that covenant, and we are part of the children of Israel. So if we have said so, and we have confessed with our mouth, we need to make sure that we are going to keep this word until the end. This is looking at it in the positive way, that if we have believed in our heart, we need to endure until the end, because we need to walk the talk. Because before the eyes of Yahuwah, everything that we say is important. One thing that came to our discussion, Jake, is that we were comparing the story of Rahab and the Givonites. Because at the end, Rahab was part of Jericho, and the Givonites were also part of the land. Both of them, at the end, formed part of the children of Israel. They were grafted in somehow. But in case of Rahab, she was part of it, and we were studying about the genealogy, and we saw that even she was part of the genealogy of Mashiach. But in the case of the Givonites, they receive a curse. And actually, I think this is also something that deserves more study, because they were supposed to cut wood and also to draw water to the house of Elohim. This is, for me, it's very interesting how these people that they were deceiving the children of Israel, even that it was accursed, they were the one in charge to bring water to the house of Elohim. For me, that's also interesting. But anyhow, when we think physically, that was one of the toughest work to do. That's why it was accursed. They were supposed to be a slave and servants during all their generations. And cutting wood is not an easy work, and drawing water and carrying water, just for us maybe in our times, is an easy thing because we don't need to carry water. In these times, they needed to walk many times, and sometimes they need to go up into a hill with a heavy burden of the water. So it was a very heavy duty. So just looking at it from the physical eyes, it was accursed. But why in one case Rahab didn't receive a curse, but in this case they were in the midst of the children of Israel, but they received a curse? And the only difference we found is about the loving commitment. It was a loving commitment. In the case of Rahab, she hid the spies, the two spies. She held them. It was fear of Yahuwah in her heart, in the same way that was fear of Yahuwah in the hearts of the Givonites, because this is what they said. Everything they did, the Givonites, because they feared Israel and they feared Yahuwah Elohim, that he was going and commanding Israel to destroy all the nations. That's why they deceived Israel. So there were fear of Yahuwah in their hearts in the same way that the Rahab had a fear of Yahuwah. But the only difference is that Rahab, she showed loving commitment. And that's why she was part and grafted in the children of Israel. In the case of these Givonites, no matter that they feared, they were working deceit in order to be pardoned, in order to have found peace. And that's the only difference we found. And this is speaking a lot to me and to us here at home, is that it's the way that Yahuwah is looking into it. And last week we were speaking as well about making confession. If we made a mistake, we need to confess to Yahuwah right away. In this case, we see something very similar. If we fear Yahuwah, we need to look at it in our attitude. We need to look in our actions. If we're working a falsehood, or we're working something that is not good, and to the eyes of Yahuwah, maybe we're going to be accepted. But it is going to be a consequence of that, and not a good consequence, as we see here. But if we confess and we work righteousness together with the fear of Yahuwah in our heart, the result is going to be totally different. So I don't know, Jake, if you want to make a comment here.
Oh yeah, I think that's a really important observation, with how it's more important to seek mercy with honesty and without guile in our mouth than to try to trick God, into giving us mercy. But yeah, it's very, very good. Juan, I'm gonna have to jump off here, but I'll be in the chat. I have to take my wife into town to meet my family this evening, so we had to leave a little earlier today. But I'll be in the chat with everyone, and I just wanted to say Shabbat Shalom before I had to jump off.
No, no problem, brother. Thank you for joining us, and like always, has been a blessing to be with you here in Virtual House Church. So don't worry. Shabbat Shalom.
Same here. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
So let's continue, and I think the last point that I have to share here is just to make some reference to what Jay was also sharing. Is if we go to the chapter 10 of the book of Joshua, And we read here about these 5 sovereigns that they are joining together. And the one that is basically leading the party in this case is the king of Jerusalem, as we see here, the Adoni-Sedek. So I think Jacob pointed this out, is that there is a coming one that they will want to deceive the world, is going to sit in Jerusalem in order to trying to be king, and he will be king actually according to prophecy on the entire world for a while. And I see a lot of correlation, and basically what we see here is that basically is this king coming and calling other nations in order to fight with Joshua, with the people of Israel, with the children of Israel. And it's not only that. And this is something that they also were discussing here at home. It's not only with the children of Israel, it's also with the people that decide to join themselves to the children of Israel, to be part of the people of Yahuwah. And this is exactly what we see here in the verse 1 to 5. Let's read it together. And it says, "And it came to be when Adoni-Sedek, sovereign of Jerusalem, heard that Yahushua had captured Ai and had put it under the ban, that he had done to Ai and its sovereign as he had done to Jericho and its sovereign, and that the inhabitants of Givon had made peace with Israel and were in their midst, that they feared greatly, because Givon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. And Adoni-Sedek, sovereign of Jerusalem, sent to Oham, sovereign of Hebron, and to Piram, sovereign of Yarmuth, and to Yaphiah, sovereign of Lachish, and to Debir, sovereign of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Givon, for it has made peace with Yahushua and with the children of Israel. So the 5 sovereign of the Amorites, the sovereign of Jerusalem, the sovereign of Hebron, the sovereign of Yarmuth, the sovereign of Lachish, the sovereign of Eglon, gathered together and went up, they and all their armies, and camped before Givon and fought against it. So what's the point I want to make? For sure they feared Israel and Yahushua because everything that Yahuwah was doing through them. But in this case, what they decided to do, they decided to persecute the people and the inhabitants of Givon. Why? Because they decided to make peace and to be part of the people of Yahuwah. And what for me was the correlation to that is that Yahushua spoke, and also the disciples spoke so much, and the prophets they have been speaking so much throughout centuries. It's about how the people that decide to live differently are going to be persecuted. And this is exactly what we see here in this passage. And I think we're living exactly that today. All of us that we decide to live differently, all of us that we decide to follow the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah are being treated differently. And more is coming. And because the scriptures say so, and Yahuwah has been speaking through his prophets saying so. And we see it clearly here, so it should not be a surprise to us that deciding for Yahuwah causes persecution. But it's something that should make us fearful. Not at all. It's something that should speak to our heart, that the one that is in our side is greater and mightier than the ones that is not in our side. So, and we see many reference of this, just to close the point. Let's go to the book of Revelation. Again, chapter 19, verse 19 to 21. And it says the following, And I saw the beast, and the sovereigns of the earth, and their armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. We were reading before in the chapter 16 how these three unclean spirits were going to gather all the nations for the great battle in the great day of Yahuwah Almighty. This is the great day of Yahuwah Almighty. And who is the one leading these nations? Is the beast. The same way that we see the king of Jerusalem as a parallel to the anti-Mashiach, the Antichrist, that's going to be at the end leading the nations in order to fight against the children of Israel. It's exactly the same that we see here. And the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, a fire burning with sulfur, and the rest were killed with the sword which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the bears were filled with their flesh. It's exactly, as we see in the chapter 10. And what Jacob was mentioning is so important about the hailstone. It's the same way somehow that he destroys Sodom and Amorah in Hebrew, that we will see in the end times. It's exactly the same, that this is Yahuwah fighting for us the battle. And if we go to the chapter the 20th, just to complement what will happen at the end of the millennial kingdom, in the verse 9 and 10, it says, "And they came up over the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the set-apart ones and the beloved city. And fire came down from Elohim out of the heaven and consumed them. And the devil, who led them astray, was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are. And they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever." So even after the millennial kingdom, we will see, persecution and fight against the people of Yahuwah. But even as we saw in this portion, as we see that's going to happen in Har Megiddo, once again, Yahuwah will fight the fight for us. So let's not be afraid of what's happening, of the challenges that we're living, because if we believe in Yahuwah with all our heart, we know that He will fight for us. And even if we have to die, as we have been speaking in the past, and if this is the will of Yahuwah, let's be prepared for that in order to complete our emunah. That with the promises of Yahuwah, that we are going to be resurrected, that we are going to be part of the kingdom of Yahuwah. All the people today are so afraid of death. This is moving the world today. It's fear to die. But all of us, we have hope that this is not the end. We have this amazing, great hope of the coming kingdom of Yahuwah. Can you imagine? Yahushua HaMashiach. Can you imagine Abraham? Can you imagine the disciples being afraid to die? We will not be here most probably. But they hold fast to the truth and to that hope that is greater than anything else. Believing with all their hearts, having the conviction of the truth of the word of Yahuwah in their hearts until the end. And this is what we have been called out, to act in the same way, to believe in the same way, understanding that Yahuwah is the one fighting for us. And if we are in His hands, there's nothing to fear, not even death. Because we need to fear the one who is able to kill the body and the nefesh, the soul, in Gehenna, hell. Who is that one? Yahuwah Elohim. And when He's going to do it? In the judgment day. So, we have this hope, and we need to grasp very strongly to that hope. that Yahuwah is with us. And you know, when we see here, just to finish the thought, persecution against those that decided to make peace, talking about the Givonites, because this is exactly what they decided. These 5 kings, I will go to fight with them, with the Givonites, no matter it was a great city, because they decided to join themselves to the children of Israel, to make peace with them. So let's go and let's destroy them. This is speaking to us, is speaking to anybody that wants to join in these days to the people of Yahuwah through Yahushua HaMashiach. It's going to happen exactly the same. And the best way to show this is by reading the book of Revelation. And let's go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And we know this is the sign of the woman in heaven, and the dragon persecuting the woman. But it says the following, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to fight with the remnant of her seed, those guarding the commands of Elohim and possessing the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach. So, you know, persecution is inevitable when we are in this world. Persecution will end when this world is going to be led by the righteous king, that is Yahushua HaMashiach. And when finally righteousness and shalom will fill the earth. And that's going to be at the moment that Yahushua HaMashiach is going to be the King of Kings and Lords of Lords here in the established kingdom of Yahuwah on earth. So persecution is part of all. But so let's not get surprised. But also let's remember that Yahuwah is with us. You know, there are multiple things in this portion as well, in the way that they were fighting and conquering the land. You know, there were 7 cities in total that they were conquering. And it's so relevant because we're talking about 7 nations in the land as well. So, you know, the point is that, and I think the best point to finish my comment here is that everything we see between chapter 9 and chapter 10, and if we think in the days that we are living and the days that are coming, is just to strengthen our faith that every time that we consult with Yahuwah, every time that we believe that Yahuwah is with us, there's nothing to fear. No matter persecution that is arising, no matter that we see fights coming to our door, we know that we are stronger because Yahuwah is with us. And if we are moving and flowing according to His will, He will fight for us. So let's not be afraid. That's why, you know, I titled this portion, Do Not Fear Them. Why is that? Because I think this is in the chapter 10, verse 8. Let's go just to finish this Virtual House Church today. Let's go to Joshua, chapter 10, verse 8. You know, Yahushua in the verse 7, it says, went up from Gilgal, he and all the soldiers with him, and all the mighty brave men. Can you imagine? The Amorites, 5 kings, were coming to destroy the Givonites, and the Givonites were pleading with Yahushua, you have a covenant with us, help us, defend us. And you know, this is speaking a lot as well, especially for all of us, that we are leading more people in our houses because you are in a position or you are leading your household. You need to defend your household. This is the way that the scripture is talking about. You know, we have responsibilities. If we have people somehow depending on us, we have responsibility for those people. And we see it here clearly. They needed Yahushua because of the covenant, and the children of Israel, because of the covenant, they needed to protect the Givonites. But can you imagine? Maybe they have their strategy to go city by city. They were not expecting to have 5 kings joining themselves together in order to fight immediately at once. But they needed to do it. So this is a reason to be afraid. For sure, you're seeing the multiple nations, nations of giants coming to fight with you. It's a matter to be afraid if we see with our own eyes, with our physical eyes. But what Yahuwah said to Yahushua in verse 8, it says, and Yahuwah said to Yahushua, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hand. Not one of them does stand before you. You know, Tira Mehem, do not fear them. This is the message for you and me today. Let's not fear them. No one of them does stand before us, because Yahuwah is with us. And the King of Kings, the Melech HaMelachim, Yahushua HaMashiach, is with us. So, brothers and sisters, thank you so much for joining us today in the Virtual House Church. It's always a blessing. You know, we will continue next week with this cycle of Joshua. You know, I do believe that, as I said at the beginning, there is too much to learn, there's too much to see compared to what we are living in these days. So, you know, I'm feeling in my heart to reinforce this idea. Sometimes it's easy to speak and to say so, not being afraid. But, you know, we are human beings. We are being created with emotions, you know? And I think it's not... It's totally normal. It's totally understandable to have doubts in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow. To think how I'm going to live, what the work I'm going to do. You know, this is mentioned in the book of Revelation that nobody will be able to sell and buy if it doesn't have the mark of the beast. So if these thoughts are coming to your mind time to time, just you need to understand that this is normal, because it's part of our emotions. It's normal to have these thoughts and to think like that sometimes. But what is normal too, for us, that we have decided to believe in the word of Yahuwah. What is normal too for us, that we have decided to give our lives servants of Yahuwah Elohim. Follow the Melech, Yahushua HaMashiach. What is normal to us as well is to have these thoughts that no matter what's coming to the world, that we are children of Elohim, that we have nothing to fear, that those times that we feel ourselves weak, those times that we feel ourselves with doubts, fear, those times is when we need to close our eyes. We need to seek the face of Yahuwah, and we need to cast that burden into Him, because He will help us on those times of troubles. So don't blame yourselves when you're thinking and having these thoughts. The opposite. Remind yourself when you're going through those moments about whom you serve, about the decision you made many years ago about who is your Father, about what's your real nature. And the Ruach HaKodesh will give you the strength. I don't know why I'm speaking about this, but I felt it and I'm just speaking what's in my heart. Times are going to be challenging, and we need to stay strong in the word of Yahuwah. The Ruach will guide us. The Ruach will strengthen us. So that's the way we need to do it. That's the way we need to serve Yahuwah without fear. As Yahuwah said to Joshua ben Nun, and we study this in the first chapter, be strong and courageous. Let's be strong and courageous as the servants of Yahuwah in the past. It's our time. This is our time to serve Yahuwah in the same way. This is our time to show Yahuwah what is in our heart. This is our time to show ourselves what is within us in our heart. Now is our time to shine the light of Yahuwah in this world full of darkness. So I hope that this study has blessed you. It has blessed me. And as I always tell you, it's a blessing to be here in this virtual house church. It's a blessing to know that you are there somewhere in the world. It's a blessing to know that we are not alone. It's a blessing to know that we are family, Mishpacha. It's a blessing to know that we are Echad in the Ruach HaKodesh. So, once again, as we always do it, we're going to finish the broadcast in the right way with the Aaronic blessing, but not before the saying, thank you so much. I hope that your week is going to be, this new Shavua, it's going to be a blessing to all of you. And again, stay strong in the word. Stay strong in the way of Yahuwah. So let's finish and let me put this Aaronic blessing for all of you. And let's receive the blessing from Yahuwah.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה יישא יחוה פניו לך לך שלום יישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you
Yahuwah te bendiga y te guarde. Yahuwah haga resplandecer su rostro en ti y tenga de ti compasión. Yahuwah alce su rostro sobre ti